Shelby McCallum, WCBL Radio. Remember, these tapes are available at the Marshall County Library in Benton and the State Archives in Frankfort. We're visiting today with George Holland. Mr. Holland lives just off of US 68, and he's on a road named for him, I suppose, the George Holland Road. It's my first time to visit. It's good to be with you, Mr. Holland. I've seen you at 200 or 300 ball games, I guess.
So. I imagine that's something like that, man.
And it's nice to have your wife here in the room with us, and you have a beautiful, cool, shady place. I like those trees out there. The road's paved. I guess in the old days you had to put up with dust.
Oh, sort of. It's been when John Dyke was magistrate. They paved it here.
Well, good for John. I'm all for him. I like to get out of the mud. Now, we start right off and we try to help these genealogists who like to hear clues about their background and so on. Your mother and father.
My dad's name was George Marion, and my mother was a Petway, Florence Petway.
Mm-hmm.
I just barely remember her. She died when I was only 5 years old.
Yes, sir. Well, naturally, you wouldn't remember an enormous amount about her.
Just barely remember her.
So, were you born in Marshall County, by the way?
I was born a mile out from Birmingham.
Uh-huh.
Down there where they used to have picnic, Birmingham reunion right on the river, on the bank of the
How big a
lake.
family were you in?
There were 4 girls and 2 boys. Burnett was my brother.
Yes, sir. I knew that much, but I didn't know.
And there's 4 girls. And Burnett and the oldest sister is done deceased. And I lived there until I don't remember. I moved in up to where the Girl Scout camp is now.
Yes, sir.
And then the Girl Scout, when they bought the property there, I moved out here in 41, where I live now, in 41.
Do you remember anything about any of your grandparents?
No, I don't. I remember my granddad Holland. I just remember him a little bit, not much. And my grandmother Holland died before I was born, and my mother, Petway, mother and father did too.
Now, Woodrow Holland told me once that at one time the Hollands came close to running the county.
Oh,
and now he named 5 that were in office
at the same time. I guess so.
Have you ever been interested in
I was
politics?
deputy sheriff. I wasn't interested in it, but I was deputy sheriff.
Yes, sir.
And from 34 to 38,
Yes, sir.
when Burnett was sheriff.
All right, where did you go to school, Mr. Holland?
I went to Birmingham until high school. I went to Calvert City then and started the Calvert City School in 1920.
Mm-hmm. So Calvert had a high school before Birmingham did?
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Stone I wanted to go to school. Burnett wanted me to start in 1919, but I had chills. She had chills every other day all summer in 1919, and Dr. Stone said, "No, you're not going to go to school."
Uh-huh.
And
now that was probably malaria, wasn't it?
Sure it was. I had them every other day, and I weighed 100 pounds, and I was about as tall as, well, nearly 6 feet high, and I weighed about 100 pounds. I started school the next fall, in 1920, I weighed 165 pounds, and I haven't had a chill since.
Yes, sir. You got to take some quinine, I suppose.
Oh, I suppose so. Old Grove's.
That stuff was bitter, wasn't it?
Grove's chill tonic.
I remember that. Grove's tasteless chill tonic, but it wasn't really tasteless, was
Not really. I get it. The other bottle out there, you want to taste it? Full bottle out there, I reckon I had left. And
Well, do you remember anything about any of your teachers?
well, my first teacher, I guess, was Miss Wilma Gohing, and she got sick, and just a little after school started, and Nina McWaters.
Well, now I remember her well.
She just died just
Yes,
a
yeah.
few months ago.
Mhm.
Was my next teacher, and then I don't remember who was the next one, but then I went to Miss Georgia Brandon. Of course, you know her
Yes,
too.
sir, I do.
And after Georgia Brandon, I guess was Dalton Cross.
And I remember Mr. Cross.
JD. I remember him very well. He's the only teacher that ever did act like he wanted to whip me, but he whipped me about every other day.
Oh, you must have been in the shape I was. I got a whipping every day instead of every other.
That's
My
the
first school.
only teacher that ever offered to whip me. And then after that, I went to Miss Lucy Faust. You don't remember her either, I don't
No,
suppose.
sir, I don't remember her.
Annie Cox, she married, well, she's just been dead a couple of years.
I can remember my dad was in the nursing home over here at Benton, and Mr. Cross's wife was over there.
Yeah.
And
sure.
I can just see Mr. Cross every day walking
Yeah.
across there to visit his wife.
Yeah.
Of
And
course, he was a rather old man at that time.
then I started high school in 1920. Homer, Ford, and Larry, that's Dr. Ford's mother and dad, were my first high school teachers.
What did you like most in school? Were you a poetry man or a math man?
No, I really liked English better than anything else, I
Mhm.
guess. Math and English.
Mhm.
I like basketball better than anything else.
You love basketball. Well, you and your brother were always the biggest sports fans, and you both played, didn't you?
I did. I played high school ball. Burnett didn't. He went. He didn't play. There wasn't any high schools around when he was. He was a baseball player though.
Yes, sir.
I played baseball a couple of years, but I didn't care much about it. And my freshman year, I was playing on just a scrub team. You know, it's recess and dinners and all. We'd play and. Hurley Roberts, you don't remember him either, and Robert Smith, you probably know Robert Smith, lives at Murray now.
Yes, sir.
They told, they were the varsity, and they told Mr. Ford, said, Mr. Ford, said, we want George on our team. And he put me on that, I played on that team, made the varsity then before school was out. Went to tournament time, played in the varsity.
Mhm.
And
So the people you were playing against noticed you were fairly good.
yeah.
That's good.
Well, in fact, the team I was playing on in recesses and all, we'd beat the first team nearly every time. And they wanted me on that team, and they put me on that team, and I wanted to quit school before that, but after I made the varsity, I didn't care a thing, didn't want to quit anymore.
Well, you know, that is one thing about sports. It does give a little variety to the education.
That's right.
And in that sense, it's very good, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know whether you ever knew Allie Harper. Did you know Allie Harper?
Don't believe I did, no, sir.
He was classmate, and
I remember, wasn't there a Harper that played on the Sharp team in
yeah,
38?
but that was a different. He never did play Allie never did play basketball,
Uh-huh.
and he told me after he got out of high school, he said, George, I never would have finished high school if it hadn't been for you.
So you got him interested.
I'd help him get his lessons and everything.
Well, did your father farm?
Oh,
or?
yeah, we farmed.
So you grew up on a farm.
Yes.
You knew then.
They had some of not the river, not on the river bottom, but the first ridges out there where I was raised.
So you've suckered tobacco.
Well, Dad didn't raise tobacco.
He didn't.
No, he could make him sick. And we had a man that stayed there with him. He raised a crop after I was 12, 14 years old, 12, 13. And I helped him. And then my sister married Gilbert Henson, and he raised tobacco, and I got to raising tobacco then. I helped then all the time.
All right, could you tell us a little bit about how you met your wife?
Yes. See, first time I ever saw her was while I was deputy sheriff. I didn't know her then, but there's 3 or 4 girls up Mr. Solon Johnson's, and I served some summonses on them for something. First time I ever saw her, and then she married a very close friend of ours, and in fact, we worked together for 3 or 4 years while he was living. He died then, and and my sister that I'd been living with died, and I needed a housekeeper, so I got her.
Well, good. That's great. You had known her then sometime.
Yes, I had eaten at her home several times. I knew she was a good cook. And
it pays to store away some of these facts, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
What was your wife's name before
she was a Johnston.
Uh-huh.
Before she was ever married, and she married Leonard Duncan.
Yes, sir.
She had 3 children by Leonard, and one of them died before we married, and the other 2 are just, well, they don't know what I'm their daddy.
Are there any grandchildren from that group?
Oh, yes. How many, Mom? 4 or 6?
6, I was working 6, I think. You've got some of your own.
And I've got 3 grandchildren of my own. Well, see, we had 2 boys.
Uh-huh.
George Dwayne and Jimmy. I don't know whether you know that George Dwayne's as bad to go to basketball games as I am.
Yes, sir. Do any of them live near enough that you get to enjoy the company?
We see them. The older boy lives
between here and the highway?
Yeah. First house on the right, going back up that
Yes.
way. And the other boy lives up by on Roy Lovett Road, if you know where that is. I don't know. Barnett Cemetery.
Well, both my parents are buried at Barnett Cemetery, so
in Marshall County. Yours in Callaway County, though.
Well, I grew up a lot of the time in Callaway, and I went to grade school there.
Were they born in Marshall County, the Marshall County Barnett Cemetery? Is that
yes, sir. That's where they're buried.
My son lives.
I was born inside of that cemetery.
Well,
Jim Will Barnett's place,
yeah,
in fact.
Yeah.
My dad rented a farm from him. He ran a little country store there.
I don't remember Mr. Barnett, but now my boy lives. You might have known where J.V. Cress lived.
Absolutely, I knew Java Cress and Ray Cress. And
well, J.V. is Jim's granddaddy-in-law. Melba, you may know Melba Cress,
yes,
married to Wilkins.
I certainly do.
Well, that's his mother-in-law.
That's not very far from my Aunt Vera Irvin Warren,
No.
my mother's sister.
No.
Of course, her husband's dead now, but they were great friends of the Cresses.
Well, that's where he lives. He lives on the J.B. Cress lives in the J.B. Cress house right now, unless he's moved this week. He built a new home down there, but he hadn't moved. Last week he hadn't moved.
Right now, you were deputy sheriff. After that, what did you do? Did you farm or?
Farmed until, well, I have farmed all the time until I went to the Army then in 42.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. Where did you train?
In Seattle, Washington.
Out around Fort Lewis?
No, Fort Campbell. I mean, Lawton,
Uh-huh.
Fort Lawton.
Fort Lawton, yes, sir.
Really, Ray, I didn't have any training, didn't have much training. I had close order drill for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then I was assigned to a military police outfit. I stayed in the Army 6 months, and got my discharge on account of my age.
Yes, sir. Yeah, they started out when the war was first going, they drafted people through 44, and then they dropped it down to 38.
Yeah, I was 38 in September after I left, after I went to the Army in August. And they passed a law then to discharge over 38.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked for my discharge, and I got out then, and I farmed until I joined a carpenter's local in 51 and worked down to doing the construction of the atomic plant. And I worked in as a carpenter until I was 62, and I took my retirement then. I farmed the rest of the time, all the time too.
Mm-hmm. So you were in that F.H. McGraw and Company period.
Oh, I was there a year or so.
Well, they about wore those roads out through there in
I
those
reckon
days.
They did, they sure did.
Well, tell us something about Birmingham or any other towns as you remember them, Benton, changes
Well,
that may have been made.
I remember the night riders at Birmingham. I remember the night they were shooting at the shooting. Dad got us out on the porch and let us watch the shooting.
Well, tell us a little more about
And
that.
the next morning he got all the kids in the wagon, and we went to Birmingham and saw where they had shot into the houses, and 3 or 4 of the houses there. Well, they were still there. They were still there when the dam came.
Mm-hmm.
Still see bullet holes in the houses.
What was this over the Tobacco Association?
Well, really, I don't know, Ray. That's what they accused it of being. But the niggers, you're not supposed to say niggers now, I don't
No.
reckon.
No, sir.
There's more black people in Birmingham than there were whites, and they just about took the town, and the white people didn't like it, and they organized. Well, they just had them well organized. It had always thought that Mr. Edgar Ellison organized them. He was a veteran of Spanish-American War. And he had them organized good, but they got whiskey mixed in with it, and out there's whipping some of the niggers, and one old nigger got a gun there, and he shot at them and wounded one or 2 of them, and Dad said he was watching, listening and shooting, and when they lowered the gun down shooting in the house, you could tell just as well they shooting in the house as you could. You know, they've been shooting up in the air, but then they lowered them shooting in the house. You could tell it.
Well, I never heard a story like that before. I didn't have any idea it had anything to do with racial
It was
things.
racial. I think
I was thinking it was about tobacco.
I don't think it was tobacco had much to do with it. To tell you the truth about it, I think it was racial. Of course, I wasn't old enough to remember anything about it, but my brother-in-law lived at Birmingham,
Mm-hmm.
and he said the niggers would be sitting there, standing on the street talking, and a white woman come down the street. They wouldn't back up to give her room to go down the sidewalk. I don't know myself, but he told me that.
Well, what about the railroad? What was there a bridge along there somewhere?
Oh, no, railroad, Gilbertsville, the closest place.
As the Gilbertsville, you had to
Yeah.
go all the way down there
Yeah.
to catch a train, or to Gilbertsville or Calvert City, I guess.
Yeah,
Calvert's been
yeah.
still farther though.
Yeah, Gilbertsville's only 10 miles below, down the river, down from Gilbertsville. I mean from Birmingham. And I think they killed wounded one of the Bleak boys, and he turned state evidence in, and then, you know, they sent some of them to the pen. A few of them went to pen on account of that
Mm-hmm.
shooting and all.
What were the roads like between Benton and Birmingham then?
Well,
Were
you
they
could-
good gravel?
You could walk over them.
Yes.
I went to a county tournament Benton once, and well, I stayed at Woodrow's and stayed over there during the tournament at Woodrow's daddy, mother. And Edgar Smith was over there to the last game in a Model T Roadster, and he had a load with him, and I left Benton the same time they did, and when I got home, I lived a mile out from Birmingham. I could still hear his car going into Birmingham. I'd walked home, and they had pushed that forward.
Through the mud holes
Uh-huh.
and so on. Yeah. Oh, what, do you remember your first car ride?
No, I guess it was with Leland Edwards got an old, I don't know what kind of car it was, and I guess I rode it first thing I remember riding. I was a very small boy.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever ride in an airplane?
No, I've never ridden an airplane. I haven't said I wouldn't, but I haven't had any desire to.
What did you do for amusement after you... someone told me once that Birmingham had a lot of showboats that would stop there.
Oh, yeah, every 2 or 3 every summer. Old Cotton Blossom, I've been to it north times. And one named French. Well, you remember Luther Goheen, I guess, don't you?
Yes, sir. I remember him.
He was he made one summer on the stage on one of them showboats.
Mm-hmm. So he got to come back home and his friends
Yeah,
see him in the plays and so
yeah,
forth.
yeah. He was pretty good actor.
Well, he was, when I knew him, he taught agriculture at Lonoke.
No, that was Lester.
Oh, Lester, yes. Okay, I got him mixed up there. I was thinking of a
Well,
different person.
their mother started teaching. I think it was my first school, and she got sick, and she had to quit, and they went to to somewhere in the west, or Texas or New Mexico or somewhere, Arizona. And that's when Miss Nina McWaters took over.
Mhm. Well, could you tell us something about how you swapped work with people to kill hogs or something of
well,
this nature?
Sure, if we had hogs to kill, we always had a bunch of hogs to kill, and we'd swap work with them. And cutting tobacco, we'd swap work with the neighbors. I had one